You're listening to Informed Dissent. If you're a longtime listener, welcome back. If you're new, welcome, and here's the lay of the land. I'm Jamie Reed, a lesbian and a whistleblower who worked inside a pediatric gender center. My co-hosts are Lauren Legere, also a lesbian and a longtime LGBT advocate. Our other co-host is Cori Cohn, a gay man who underwent gender transition early in his life. All three of us come from the left, and none of us fit the story you've been told about who questions gender medicine. And that's not an accident. Every week, we will cover the headlines you need to know across medicine, law, sports, schools, and prisons. And then we dig in. The three of us, and most weeks, a guest worth hearing from. We built this show because we believe that the most important conversations about gender politics are the ones happening between people with real stakes and real disagreements. Free inquiry, honest argument, and dissent that's worth something because it's actually informed. Welcome. Hello, everyone. Welcome back to Informed Dissent for this week, Saturday, August the 1st. LeAnne and Cori are going to be holding down the fort for us this week, and they've got a great episode lined up for you. I wanted to jump in just to check in and give you a little bit of a teaser of what is going on right now in the world of sports. Honestly, this one is kind of a personal favorite for me, and I need to give a shout out right up front. Sophie Cunningham is from my home state. She grew up on a family farm in Missouri. She went to Rockbridge High School in Columbia, Missouri, and became the most decorated women's basketball player in Mizzou history. So this is a hometown girl from right here, and I think that really matters about why she's one of those to break her silence. Quick version for anyone who's been following. Indiana Fever guard Sophie Cunningham gave an ESPN interview a couple of weeks ago where she said, in her words, that she wants to, quote, protect young girls in a locker room or young girls in sports who shouldn't have to go against biological men. It's a pretty simple statement, but it set off a bit of a firestorm. And here's how it escalated. Last Tuesday, a group of local advocates in the area decided to hold a rally to say thank you to Sophie, to show her their support. This game was in Seattle, and two teenage girls, were able to sit courtside at this game when the Fever played the Storm. They were wearing shirts from XXXY, and they were holding signs that said, "We love you, Sophie, and thank you, Sophie, for speaking up for girls." According to these girls, one of the Seattle Storm co-owners, Celeste Keaton, confronted them directly, allegedly calling them effing insane and telling them that Jesus loves everyone and saying she hopes that Jesus could forgive them for their sin. The sin of holding a sign at a basketball game. The Storm apologized the next day, and then on Thursday, the WNBA actually suspended Keaton from the team's next 5 home games and fined her an undisclosed amount. That's maybe a slap on the wrist. I don't know what this woman earns in a year, but the league did step in. Cunningham didn't stay quiet either. She posted that she believes there's a safe space and love for everyone. She then, in that tweet, states biological girls, biological boys, trans women, and trans men. But she also goes on to call Keaton's behavior truly embarrassing and, quote, saying it shows the type of leader she is, end quote. She also promised the two girls gifts for standing their ground. Then, this Friday, July the 31st, before this episode drops, there was a second rally in Portland, a ahead of the Fever Fire game. And friend of the pod, Kara Dansky, will be there in person. If you don't know Kara, she's been a fixture in this fight for a very, very, very long time. She was at that WDI USA event back in 2023 that got violent. So her showing up shows you how seriously people are taking this. If you're catching this on Saturday, August 1st, go and check your feed. We all want to see how Friday evening's rally played out. What's coming up next is Sunday. The Fever will be playing in Minneapolis. Jennifer Say, the founder of XXXY Athletics, will be rallying outside the Target Center. She has been trying to bring Cunningham on as an ambassador for a while now, but if you're anywhere near Minneapolis and you can get there, this is one to show up for. Positive, thank you, Sophie rally, just to cheer on a champion who's taken on this cause. And there's another thing I want to point out directly to anyone listening right now. You do not need a national platform or a brand to get behind this. This is a shout out to every single small affinity group across the country. All you need is a few friends, a pleasant, lovely sign, and a willingness to show up. That's it. There's no barrier to entry here. And if you're anywhere in Missouri, remember, one of our own is the one standing up, and we can stand up behind her. We will be linking the Indiana Fever's remaining schedule for the rest of their season in the show notes if you want to plan around any of these games, whether it's showing up for a rally or just continuing to watch how this unfolds. You'll have the dates in front of you. Before I let you go to hear LeAnne and Cori, I also want to give you a quick look ahead. Next week, we've got an important case to dig into that involves women's prisons and the fight over who gets housed where. And then starting in August, we're kicking off a short series about what's been happening in libraries. We've been working on this one for a while, and we're really glad that the guests are finally going to be joining us, and we're going to really get to have some really in-depth conversations about what has happened to the state of libraries in the United States with trans. So, on to the show.
Welcome to this week's Informed Dissent. My name is Cori Cohn. I am one of your mostly regular co-hosts, and we have a special guest co-host with us today. You've never seen her face before, but you are definitely familiar with her writings from the weekly news roundups. Welcome, LeAnne.
Thank you so very much. I actually was on here one week when you could not come, and I filled in and talked about Substack that one week.
Oh no, I missed
so
that.
This is my second time on here, but thank you so very much for having me on again today while your co-hosts are out and about upon the world.
Yes, they're living their best lives.
As we all should. So what have you been up to?
Oh, this and that. Have you watched any basketball games lately?
Yes, I am quite the basketball fan. I am an actual season ticket holder at Auburn for women's basketball. And I've just been really distressed seeing everything that's going on. Sophie Cunningham, who plays for the Fever, came out and said, I don't think biological males, which, that's your hometown, the biological males probably ought not be playing in the WNBA.
Yeah, they call her MAGA Barbie just to put her down.
Yes, she's had some standoffs with former Auburn player DeWanna Bonner and all sorts of things. So it always seems like they're looking for something new to pick on with her. But it's good to see a woman in sports other than Martina Navratilova actually standing up for things. And, this whole thing reminds me in sports, Yogi Berra said this is like deja vu all over again because we actually had some of this conversation last night and we forgot to record, but I'm glad we've had a second time because I've had a better time to get my thoughts together. And, in one of my favorite movies about women's sport, they said there's no crying in baseball, and that should apply to basketball as well.
There's no crying in basketball.
Absolutely.
Well,
Absolutely.
what if somebody bowls you over and knocks you down on the ground and you hurt your back? What about, can you cry then?
Well, Larry Bird and Rodman and a lot of those guys used to do that, and that was during basketball's golden era. And part of why the men's game is so unwatchable today is if anybody looks at you for longer than 2 seconds, they do something known as the flop. And it was starting to make the women's game a little bit more entertaining because they were letting the women really play. You have to
Yeah.
excuse me, I'm a Southerner, I say things like that.
Pulling the hair and scratching each other, you mean?
Well, no, no, no. That's getting into catty girl things.
Oh,
There's
okay,
one
okay.
thing to play tough defense, and there's another thing to start bullying on people. Because Larry Bird didn't care who you were. If you weren't wearing the green and white, he went after you equally. And these days, it seems to me like the girls that are getting picked on are overwhelmingly white and overwhelmingly straight. And I
Hmm.
don't like that because I just spent my whole life working to get to a world where straight people don't treat gay people different. And being from the deep South, I've spent a lot of my life wanting to have a world where black people were treated the same people as white people. And to see this complete black mirror happening
Yeah.
in the sport that has most that has probably had the most money put in it to try to do something on a women's team sport. It upsets me because there are a lot of good players who deserve to have this
Right.
opportunity.
Well, let's talk about Sophie Cunningham a little bit. So she entered the league, what, 2 years ago?
Yes,
Okay, so she's even newer than Caitlin Clark, who's the other,
the other phenom,
right?
you know, and she did so well. Caitlin did from college because as a season ticket holder, I actually got to see her arch nemesis Angel Reese play with LSU a good bit.
Mm.
And we were actually talking at the time, this thing with Caitlin and Angelica might work up to the point that it is like Larry versus Magic, which is what made basketball so entertaining in the 80s.
The rivalry.
Now it's just all driving to politics. And, you know, to borrow a metaphor, Mick Jagger the other day said, I'm just here to play rock and roll. I'm not here to talk about politics. Because
Right.
people don't come to the show to hear politics, they come here to hear rock and roll. And
Mm.
he got on to Bruce Springsteen and a couple other people. And I think the same thing should be said for basketball. We've done made the balls smaller for the women. So we need to at least keep the entertaining, good, clean fun that we'd want the kids to see. And that can be rough play. Basketball
Wait,
is,
wait, hang on, hang on. You said we want the good, clean fun, which can be rough play.
yes, rough play can be good, clean fun if it's done within the rules of the game.
And now I don't understand because they like slam into each other and get
Absolutely.
put their
And
hands up
penalties
and
get called.
hit each other.
Absolutely. It's called charging when the offense does it, and it's called blocking when the defense does it.
And
Those are
that's in the
part of the rules of
rules.
the games. Absolutely.
I don't like that.
Well,
What
here's the
about
thing.
flag basketball? They can pull a no.
You know, flag football didn't always work off so well. You know, Sometimes when you're trying to grab the flag, and in basketball, it would work even less well, I have to think. But I'm just really tired of seeing, when we were talking about tennis last night and how great women's tennis is. And
Yeah.
while I always knew that Martina and Chris were, big rivals, I never felt like when they left the court that one
Yeah.
of them wanted to murder the other one. Or with
Christine Everett.
Steffi and Celis or any of those great matches
Yes.
that we've seen over the years.
Steffi
But
Graf and who else did you say?
Monica Seles, that was
Monica
really her
Seles.
big
That's right.
arch nemesis.
Right. Right. Right.
The only time one of those women got hurt, it was from somebody in the stand. So I just want to see everybody start behaving like adults and stop trying to make this a gay, straight, or a black, white issue. It should be about all women getting a chance to perform at the highest level and get paid for it.
Well, I wanted to ask you because I think this is in the news this week. What did Sophie Cunningham say exactly? Do you have that?
Yes, I do. She said, young girls in sport shouldn't have to go against biological men.
All right.
She said, I've got a lot of negative feedback about people about me hating on the trans a couple days later when it got back to her. I never once said that. I just called for common sense.
Okay. All right. Well, I saw, I think today there was an Instagram post that she made, I guess, where she had a sassy pose. And the title of the Instagram post was, I said what I said.
You know who that reminds me of?
No, who?
J.K. Rowling.
J.K. Rowling. I said what I said?
Yes. It very much does. And once again, J.K. Rowling said something very down the middle.
Yes.
You know?
Dress what you want, how you want, call yourself what you want, and love whoever you want. But this was related to Maya Forstater. But don't force me to. I forget exactly what she said. It was something along the lines of, "Don't make me pretend that sex
men
isn't
aren't
sex."
men, and that sex isn't real.
Right.
I think mostly, other than not harming children, that's the only thing that other people are really asking for.
Well, it was. I think things have changed a bit.
I think among the more mean-spirited people it has, but I think a lot of people that are called TERFs on a daily basis, even though their skin is harder, I don't think a lot of people really want more than to protect children and to protect women's spaces or any single sex space. I know
Yeah.
most men don't really care, but a few do.
Well, I hope that Sophie Cunningham and Hoosier Pride. I'm glad it's a Indiana team. I hope that she is able to encourage her teammates and other women in the WNBA to make even-handed, fair comments supporting the right for women and girls to play against other women and girls.
And once one person speaks out, it makes it easier for the second person to speak out.
I guess that's true, but one of the things that we have to recognize in retrospect is that even when you have powerful voices like J.K. Rowling or now this WNBA player, Sophie Cunningham or Martina Navratilova, it didn't really create a tidal wave of people coming out and speaking up for the rights of women and girls. And in fact, just this year, it sounds like there's even more pushback fomenting in something called the anti-rights movement. So this seems to be an emerging construction to loop together a lot of disparate viewpoints, like anti-immigrant, anti-trans, anti-disestablishmentarianism. I don't know. All the antis get looped together as the anti-rights movement.
Except for anti-Semitism.
Well,
and homophobia.
Well, of course, not anti-Semitism, but the rest of them. But groups like Sex Matters, for example, get painted with this brush of being an anti-rights movement, which is ironic because it's really a protect the rights of women and girls. It's not tearing down anybody's rights. It's trying to protect what has already been established, what had to be established, because prior to the women's rights movements, these rights were not recognized. They existed, but they weren't recognized.
Absolutely. I dated a girl years ago whose mother was one of the first women to go through law school at the University of Alabama. And there wasn't even but like one women's restroom that was for the secretaries when she started law school then. And people forget, when I was in graduate school, I studied U.S. labor history. And one of the things you talk about in the early 20th century, when you start talking about women in labor, or the fact that women had to fight for things like bathroom rights, because when women first did come into the workforce, they were getting raped in bathrooms. That is something that happened in the past. You look at
Wow.
the late 1880s and the early 1900s, women absolutely were getting raped in bathrooms at work.
And that's why there's sex segregated bathrooms. I don't think I knew that. I thought it was always just a type of Protestant moral preference that caused the separate facilities. No.
Once you've got to think though, before about 100, 150 years, women didn't leave the house very often.
Is that true?
I think in the city it very much was.
In the city, maybe among the upper classes. I doubt that was true because the women have always worked
I've always
as
worked at, no,
right.
absolutely.
Yeah.
I was speaking more of the upper crust, but
Yeah.
no one ever cared about poor women then or now. It was only when women of the middle class began to leave the house, that's really what I'm more speaking of, is women of the middle class, when they begin to leave the house and things happen to them, with the Industrial Revolution.
Right. I guess that makes more sense.
So, people I think are just mostly looking, but people are afraid, and they see what happens to Sophie on the other side of that,
Mm-hmm.
and realize, you get smacked, but it just feels like people are shooting themselves in the foot all the time.
Well, I want to point out Sophie Cunningham. Do you know when she was born?
I do not.
She was born in 1996.
Oh, wow.
So she would have been 14 years old during the pandemic.
That's mind blowing.
Isn't that mind blowing?
That is absolutely mind blowing.
Do I have that right? No, I don't have that right. I'm an idiot.
She
I
in
can't do
college?
math.
Was she in college during the pandemic?
No, if she was born in 96, she'd be 30 this year, not 20 this year.
Okay.
So 6 years ago. So she would have been 24 during the pandemic. All right, I can do math. Math is hard. So that kind of makes my point moot. But I was going to say she was very young during the pandemic. I guess 24 is still pretty young, but
It seems a lot younger today than it did, when I was 24.
but she's part of the generation, I guess, that made trans a thing to be celebrated.
I guess that would make her a Gen Z, wouldn't it?
I guess she'd be a very old or very young millennial, or how do you put it?
Very old millennial or very young Gen Z.
Very late millennial. I think that's it. Very late millennial or very early Gen Z.
She's just younger than my niece. I guess that'd be right.
Yeah.
The boomers raised them. That's all I can say about that point.
Wow. Rough.
But Gen Z, I think that our kids, the Generation X kids, are having a little bit more of a backbone and are beginning to push back.
Well, they saw so many of their classmates, right? These people are becoming adults now. They saw their classmates fall into this stuff. And as I've raised many times before, it's not the popular kids who are transitioning. It's the kids that were on the social margins in the first place. And they're probably not launching very well. So this woman, she's 30 years old. 10 years ago, they were still doing all this stuff was coming about. I'm sure she's had plenty of people in her life that have identified as non-binary or trans men. And she's able to look and say, here's how it's working. How many people who transition are really launching fully? Is it 10%, 20%?
I'm not seeing it work out well among my friends' kids who have gotten caught on this pathway. Most of them,
It's
but
the
but
same.
but so sometimes I wonder though, because so many kids are still living at home and not launching well. In general, it's a strange time we live in, and has been, I think, since really COVID.
Yeah, things never got back to normal.
But COVID's when I right after COVID's when I really started seeing so many people having their kids come out as trans, and several more lesbians I knew came out as trans over COVID.
I do some civic work with a group that is, I would not describe as left oriented, but a lot of their kids identify as trans, and it's just disorienting to me.
Do they have a more libertarian bodily autonomy sort of concept with it, or?
To be fair, I haven't probed very deeply, but they don't seem too different from the affirming parents. And I can't really, at least at this point, I can't really bring myself to talk to them too much, because I don't want to, like, nobody at all likes it when somebody says, wow, you're really making a mistake. You remember those commercials with a woman that had to use the vocoder? I smoked cigarettes for 40 years and nothing bad ever happened to me. You know what I'm talking. You remember that?
I absolutely. I
Well,
absolutely remember those.
if I had I guess my vocoder would be held over somewhere else, but I could see myself like with a similar sort of pitch, like, look, I know from looking backwards from so many years of this that even if you cannot stop your kids from doing this, you should not be encouraging them.
Absolutely.
I don't, like, love your kids, keep them close, but also keep them grounded to reality. And to the extent that I see people letting their kids become untethered, it's very uncomfortable for me.
No, I agree. I've lost a lot of friends, but I think so many people in their head think trans is a different kind of gay, and they
Yeah.
just don't think any farther because they don't want to be homophobic or transphobic.
Yeah.
Nobody wants to be called anything phobic, and it often. Renee Richards played in tennis, and nobody said, "Hey, that's a man." You know, Jennings spent what 7, 8 years on television, and nobody said, "Oh my God, they're doing that to a child."
Well, a lot of people did, but nobody in their circle did. There wasn't like a campaign against, was it Discovery? I think it was Discovery.
I
There's no
believe it was
campaign to try to
Discovery,
get the show off the air, to the best of my knowledge.
except for Sierra now. But it I think everybody has an awakening at some point, and I just hope that Sophie Cunningham will be an awakening for other people. But we probably should get on to another subject. How about
Yeah, what's next?
How about Democrats shooting themselves in the foot in both Maine and Ohio? Have you seen either of those stories?
Yeah, to remind me about Ohio.
Okay, Ohio, we have the Democratic governor candidate Amy Acton, who is the former COVID health director. She actually comes from within Acton. The Toledo Blade, which is a local, they said down the middle sort of paper, asked her about the Supreme Court ruling on men and women's sports that just came down, West Virginia versus BPJ.
Right.
And because she would like to win the race, and she's only ahead by 1 point, she said, I don't think men should be in women's sport, because she would like to win, because, why run for a race if you're going to do something to just shoot yourself in the foot? And she's running against Vivek Ramaswamy, always have a hard time with this name, who is funded by all the MAGA money in the world.
Yeah.
And she's still leading by 1 point.
Oh, really?
And so you've got dear friend of the show, Aaron Reed, just kidding, coming out and just calling her transphobic and all sorts of these things, and just getting attacked by all sorts of people on the far left. The kind of thing that probably won't change many votes in the middle, but might get the people on the far left just to stay home on election day.
Maybe not. Maybe there's enough Democratic voters who have said, thank goodness that the crazies are not taking over the party. Maybe they'll come out and show their support.
I sure hope so, because she's definitely a chance to make a few changes in this country. And then we also have Maine going on. Have you paid any attention to what the Democrats just did up there?
Well, so the Democrats, I want to talk about this for just a second, maybe a little bit more than I did last night.
Okay.
When this man Graham Plattner was running for Senate, it was discovered pretty early into his campaign two things that were important. One is that he was quite a philanderer and maybe interacted with women in a way that they didn't want to be interacted with. And second, that he had a Nazi tattoo, a skull and crossbones tattoo on his chest. And I guess there were other things too. His social media posting was a little bit racy, but those other two factors seem like
Deal
they would
breakers?
impugn the character of the candidate. You wouldn't want a candidate that had those attributes. I mean, the Republicans are okay with it, but the Democrats, you'd think that they shouldn't want that.
One would think being a Nazi alone would be enough.
Or at least embracing not let's try to be even as fair as possible. Putting a Nazi symbol on your body, even if it's just for lols or for
Here's a funny story for you. I actually own one item that has a Nazi insignia on it. It is a 1941 German sniper's rifle that my great uncle Sammy, who won the Purple Heart, took off of a dead German soldier in Bastogne and shipped back to the United States. And it's something that connects me to my family that was in the Great War, you know.
You've got war booty. That's not celebrating.
Oh,
that's
not
celebrating their defeat, not celebrating their culture.
100%.
Right.
But putting something on your body,
yeah,
you would think one would at least research what the image is before they would put it on their body.
I think he did. So the fact that the Democrats were embracing a candidate like that, making excuses for him, is really unfortunate. And one of the things that it makes me think about a lot is when in Germany, when the Nazi Party was first coming to power, a lot of people had some squeamishness with some of the things that the party stood for, but they were willing to hold their nose and support them.
Absolutely.
Because they didn't really have principles. They were for something or against something. And 100 years later, it would be hard to say what they were for or against. But nevertheless, they lined up and affiliated with this really dark, personality-driven movement. And to hear Democrats make excuses about why they're going to support somebody like Graham Plattner, or for that matter, for Republicans to excuse Trump's behavior, because he doesn't have great character. He doesn't have good character at all. So to excuse that is also our two major parties just have no standards for their leaders at this moment. But Graham Plattner was credibly accused of what the Gen Z people call SA. I think that's to get past the censor filters that they
on YouTube. Yes,
right.
I get that.
And I guess we go on YouTube, so let's do what the young people do. Censor ourselves, not the SA. And so he leaves the race, and 4 Mainers come up and try to fill in for the spot. Can you tell me about one of these candidates? What's
yes.
Ashley.
And once again, it was a situation where the Democrats allowed something that happened that didn't actually have to happen, because one, Ashley Webb, actually did not have enough signatures at the end of the day to be on the ballot. And yet, in the name of, I guess, diversity, they let her onto the stage for the debate where
Rewind. Let who on?
Look at me saying the wrong thing. He.
Oh, okay.
Ashley is a he,
That's right.
a very manly, lurchy sort of he.
Yes, the nickname that is going around on the internet is Lady Meatloaf, as he does bear quite a striking resemblance to the former 70s, 80s pop star who was in
Absolutely.
Rocky Horror.
Absolutely. I have a good Rocky Horror story, but that's for another day, I suppose. But
Yeah. So this candidate was not exactly uh, impressive. It was hard to imagine this person interacting in the Senate.
it's hard to imagine this person interacting in the state Senate, much less the federal. It's hard to imagine this guy being on your local city council. I mean, I just don't understand why the part because all the stuff came up in his Reddit and everything, and
Yeah.
you with Graham Plattner, it was like they were trying to go to the right of Susan Collins almost, and maybe try to get those people who think she's squishy to vote for him because he was just a little more butch. And then with this guy, it's like the Democrats were saying, look, we've got somebody on our stage that says we still have a soul. And yet he becomes the lunatic that he always was and starts talking about having menstruation and all sorts of things that,
Bleeding out of his butt.
yes, which is not menstruation, and just the kind of thing that offends biological women deeply. As someone who had both polycystic ovary syndrome and endometriosis, it was never a pleasant experience. And to have somebody think they're being serious, but in reality make light of what women go through,
Yeah.
really burned my chaps, I have to say, you know. And it's almost like the Democrats want to lose. And what is it? I think it was Steve Miller that said, "Clowns to the left of me, jokers to the right. Here I am, stuck in the middle with you, Cori."
Hmm.
That's how I really feel about both parties right now. It's like there's got to be somebody that we can vote for because this duopoly of the Democrats and the Republicans is just not working for much of anybody anymore.
Well, I want to make a brief pitch here then. Do you know that the libertarians in the last election cycle for president, they ran Chase Oliver, who's a gay man,
I do.
and the new incoming or newly appointed chairman of the Libertarian Party is also a gay man.
That I didn't know.
Yes. So if you're looking for an alternative to the Republicans and the Democrats, and you want a party that might appeal to your social values as well as your economic values, I would say don't cast off the Libertarian Party.
Oh no, I never have. I actually 1 year in the primary. The Democrats usually don't run many people in the primaries in Alabama.
Yeah,
So 1 year, I can't remember whatever year it was that Ron Paul ran in the Republican primary. I
right.
did vote in the Republican primary to give him a vote.
Okay, Ron Paul.
Absolutely, and I like Gary Johnson a lot.
The thing that no matter what party it is, but I think particularly with Ron Paul and Gary Johnson, is that they were saying simple things that were describing the problem and proposing solutions, not attacking people, not being bombastic, not being crude or mean or insulting either to their opponents or their opponent's base. They were just saying, here's what the problem is. And here's, if I'm elected, here's what I'll do to solve it. And the problems are things people could really recognize, like the national debt, inflation, all of these pocketbook issues, war in foreign countries that make people uncomfortable, spending billions and billions of dollars to kill people and to get Americans killed. Like very simple things, deep, not shallow things, but simple and essential things that people could relate to. And I don't see the Democrats doing that anymore. I don't see the Republicans doing that anymore.
When's the last time you heard anybody mention that Social Security is supposed to go broke in under a decade?
Oh, I think that must have been
Al Gore versus George Bush and the whole lockbox versus.
sure. Sure, but I was going to say Thomas Massey might be the last person to try to raise a flag about that, and the Republicans booted him out.
Absolutely. But I tell you, on the other side of politics, something that made me really happy is, do you know what happened with Nancy Mace and the Southern Democrats and the defense reauthorization bill that just came up? Have you read anything about that?
Well, I think we talked about it last night, but I might have forgotten. Can you remind me?
Nancy Mace has offered an amendment that says while she's not against transgender people serving in the military, she thinks that perhaps getting transitioned while you're on active duty is not perhaps the best use of our country's resources. And then also within the military that men should not be in women's sports. There were actually two parts to that.
All right. So she's proposing that we have common sense sex change laws for military service members.
Absolutely.
Right.
The VA is already hurting enough for money for people that we've already had that have been hurt in wars.
Yes, they have enough people coming home with missing limbs than to institutionally create more of them.
Because it's absolutely become one of the pipelines of how people access surgery and hormones.
Yeah, that's fair. That's fair.
Especially for lower income people who may not be on their parents' insurance or going to college or many of the other avenues you see people that are maybe more upper middle class going through. It's definitely hitting those people in the lower incomes who are going into the military the hardest.
Yes. Yes. It's not a good idea to. These are cosmetic procedures.
No, not at all.
It's not a good idea to create a pipeline of military service as a gateway to.
So I would like to have a shout out to Alabama's own Terry Sewell, Alabama House District 7, and Shamari Figures in Alabama 2, as well as Henry Collier from Texas, and Don Davis from North Carolina, and Vicente Gonzalez from Texas for having a common sense vote on this. Because
Democrats?
Those are all Democrats who voted against the party on this. Okay. Voted for common sense.
Well, that's progress. A Democrat with common sense, that's become uncommon lately. So it's the younger people. I mean, younger than me. I don't mean to imply anything about you, LeAnne. But the younger people will
let's say we're both Gen X.
Yeah, we're both Gen X. They will not have heard the term yellow dog Democrat.
That means that they would vote for any Democrat, even if it was nothing but an old yellow dog. And the South used to be full of them before it went completely red.
It did. But there was a realignment.
They became basically yellow dog Republicans, you know.
But that would have been maybe the greatest yellow dog Democrat would have been Bill Clinton.
Absolutely.
And Bill Clinton was socially moderate. He was not progressive.
Not in any way.
His wife was socially moderate, not progressive.
She was a Goldwater Republican when she was younger.
That's right. And if you wanted a picture of the nuclear American family, you had the Clintons that did a pretty good job. He was governor of Arkansas.
A southern, middle of the country state.
Right. And I think that one of the most famous things Clinton said was, I can feel your pain. And I think he meant it. I think
I do
he
too.
had an empathic sense, even though he was a good creep, as it turns out. But I think he actually did have some of that. And that was what the Democratic Party used to be. There's
Which
always
makes
been
it
more left elements to it, but that used to be a typical Democrat.
which is makes it so funny that Hillary Clinton ended up being one of the people under Barack Obama who most ended up pushing trans issues internationally while she was Secretary of State.
All right, I guess we were going to talk a little bit about Doc Stock before wrapping up.
Absolutely. She was one of my first reads when I first began to look into this topic, but I know you have actual experience with Dr. Stock.
Yeah, she has a formidable mind. So Dr. Kathleen Stock, who is what what book did she write? Did she write Material Girls?
Yes.
Okay. Sometimes I can't line up all the titles with the authors off the top of my head. Uh, very thoughtful academic, very careful with her reasoning, and helped to break open the trans topic in a way that made it accessible to uh, people who want to take it seriously, something above the tabloid level. And now she's talking about another major ideological movement that pertains to people's bodies, and that is uh, euthanasia. So, do you want to say a little bit more about that?
Well, I just think that when euthanasia really first became part of the cultural narrative with Dr. Kevorkian, I thought, I'd seen people in my family suffer through cancer and stuff, and I thought, wow, this is really something that could help people at the end of their lives who are suffering with debilitating things that are not going to get any better.
Yeah.
And I remember some of my more conservative friends saying, yes, it's going to start off there, but it's going to continue to go, and they're going to end up euthanizing people who are probably not mentally competent and have all sorts of things, and it's going to end up like eugenics, going to where they ended up in Nazi Germany.
Nah, that'll never
And
happen.
well, you were telling me yesterday about some of the figures, I think, from the Netherlands, and
I was so in the Netherlands, around 6% annually at this point. Around 6% of all deaths in the Netherlands are from euthanasia. And that includes, in a couple of cases, teenagers from who are suffering mental health issues.
the
So
very kind of
that's more
same
than 1 out of
kids,
20 deaths.
the very kind of same vulnerable kids who get sucked up into things like gender ideology because they're not happy with who they are.
Yeah, in the case that I read, this girl had been sexually assaulted and was having a very difficult time recovering from the experience. And this doctor, instead of trying to make sure she had the resources to try to recover from it, because there's a lot of things you could do to help somebody get time and space to recover from it. Instead, he killed her. He killed her. And what was striking to me is that the language that he used, he's a Calvinist, and he was saying, I had an argument whether God wanted me to do this or not. So all of his justification about, I think he said, I had a vision that God told me I should follow my conscience. It seems so close to some of the justifications that the gender clinicians use.
And it's hard to
Uh,
argue with God, huh?
it's, I don't know, it makes me uncomfortable. I can't think of any reason why we would accept a policy, any sort of social policy that allowed for the euthanizing particularly young people with mental health issues. I would say any adult with mental health issues, but particularly children. And that's not the way the world is going right now. The world is moving towards making that permissible.
Dr. Stock calls it moral libertarianism, oddly enough, to go back to libertarianism, this thing that pulls it all together, that everyone should have absolute bodily autonomy and that should settle every question. But something we were talking about last night was how this might relate with trans. And I think a lot of it goes back to Sirius founder Martin Rose. Is it Rothblatt? Is that how you say his last name?
Martine Rothblatt?
Yes. And this whole concept that if the body is just raw material that you can override, if bodily autonomy is the only thing that matters, then that same logic shouldn't just start at transition. It should go to euthanasia.
On that grim note of the social trend.
But hey, there is one more thing I wanted to talk about before we got off, which
what's that?
AI on Substack now. That's going to be an interesting thing to see what's going on and how much can we trust the AI monitors, because beginning day before yesterday, all pieces on Substack are being scanned to see if AI has written it, AI has assisted it, or if it's 100% human written. So I'm glad to see that it's people who are just putting slop out there are about to get busted.
Well, I'm a little uncomfortable with that for some reason.
Because the AI is probably going to be wrong some of the time.
Yeah. No, I a lot of my work writing is with AI at this point.
Coding and stuff like that.
What's that?
Like coding stuff, computer stuff?
No. So a lot of what I do now is I have a lot of ideas about a certain topic, and I'll just engage in a back and forth conversation with the AI on the topic.
No, it's really good for that. Everything I write, I have it steel man against me and push me. And I tell it, I want you, anything I write into you, I want you to push against me and ask me more questions.
Yeah,
at least
I
5 times.
I think that's the right way to use it, because otherwise it's just going to agree with you. So when you tell it, get in an argument with me, that's its way of being agreeable still. It's like, oh, I'm doing what the user wants. So they want an argument, I'll give them an argument. It's like the old Monty Python sketch.
I mean, I have a friend who teaches college who is now terrified that one of these AI checkers is going to say something she wrote as AI written, and that could cost her tenure.
Yeah, well, there's a lot of students that have been accused of cheating when they haven't been.
Absolutely.
Well, did we hit everything?
I think we hit everything we need to talk about. I'm sure there's always more we could talk about, but
we hit one more thing today that we didn't hit yesterday.
Yes, absolutely.
The record button.
This podcast is produced by the LGB Courage Coalition, a registered United States nonprofit fully funded by small donations like yours. We work to promote evidence-based medicine, ending the medicalization of gender nonconformity, and advocating for LGB rights. Supporting this show means supporting that work directly. If what you heard today mattered to you, please like, subscribe, and pass it along. Word of mouth is how independent shows like this one survive. You can reach us in the Substack comments section or by email at lgbcouragecoalition@gmail.com or through the contact page on our website at lgbcourage.org. We want to hear from you. And until next week, stay informed and ready to dissent.